Everything is dark, but you hear the sound of chains. A bright light begins to illuminate the surroundings. There are some people beside you, and all of you are unable to move except to stare at a wall. But everyone there was born in this place and knows no other kind of life. Everything you know about the world is what you see reflected on this wall. You are inside a cave where all the light comes from a fire that projects images of certain objects onto the wall, almost in the same way that a light projector shows a movie in a theater. When you see what you think is a rabbit, in reality, you are only seeing the shadow of something that imitates a rabbit. Even the sounds are false. They are noises imitated by other people whom you cannot see. And yes, this is a very strange hypothetical scenario. None of you know or even question whether this is reality or not. The shadows are enough for most people who are imprisoned in a particular viewpoint of the world. Until one day someone just pulls you out of there and you see the fire directly and realize that the shadows are actually just parts of objects you never had access to. Then they pull you even further away, out of the cave. At this moment you feel really quite uncomfortable. The brightness makes you very dizzy. You can't even see properly. Everything is absurdly different from what you knew. Your eyes hurt and you can only look at things indirectly, through their reflection in the water. Until you get used to the light and start looking directly at the objects in the world outside the cave, which are illuminated by the sun. When night falls and you can look at the sky and the stars without being blinded, you eagerly await the sunrise. In the beginning it's hard, but after some practice you can look directly at the sun, which illuminates everything around you. This scenario I just described is the first part of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, presented in Book 7 of his most well-known work, The Republic.
Hey, Pedro here. This video you are watching was originally in Portuguese, my native language. This is the attempt of our team to translate it to English, and I sincerely hope you enjoy it. Your feedback is extremely important to us. Now, back to the video.
In the Allegory of the Cave, the shadows represent the sensible world, which would be the physical world of appearances, while the world outside the cave is the intelligible world, which is the world of ideas. Okay, but what does this mean? To understand the Allegory of the Cave, understand Plato's view of the world. Plato split reality in two. At the lowest level, we have the sensible world, which is indeed inhabited by imperfect and changeable material objects, such as the things we know, like trees, cars, animals, people, and books. We access this world quite easily through our perception and senses. We don't even need to make an effort because this world is the reality we have known since we were born, just like the shadows in the cave. At the highest level, we would have an intelligible world inhabited by mathematical objects, and even more perfect than them, by the ideas and true forms of all things. And these forms would be the perfect and ideal objects. For example, in the world we can find various instances of chairs with different shapes, textures, sizes, and other variable properties of matter. But we do not find the idea of a chair out there. And the idea of a chair would be what makes a chair, that is, its essence, which can only be found in the world of ideas. The sensible world only provides us with copies of forms and ideas, that is, imperfect and unstable realities. In the cave, it's worse since a chair's shadow copies the material object, itself a copy of its idea. In other words, the shadow would be a copy of a copy, just like paintings and films. And this, for Plato, would mean a greater distance from the intelligible world, that is, less real and less perfect. But the intelligible world is difficult to access. We don't see mathematical objects like triangles or the number 2 walking around in our physical world, thankfully. And we also do not see the ideas or the form of things. We can only access these types of objects through abstraction, through an internal process of reflection and contemplation of our own ideas. And this can often be painful, either because we have difficulty understanding these objects or because we come to conclusions that contradict our current beliefs about the world. And that is why there is suffering when leaving the cave. The objects of the world represent different types of knowledge. Some of them we will not be able to access directly, hence the reflection in the water. But after a while, we can even look at the sun, which would represent the highest knowledge, which Plato calls the good, while the light would be the truth, and the ability to see is our ability to know. And now we come to the second part of the cave myth. You are free. But that's not all. You are not alone in the world. The people who have always been by your side are still slaves to illusions. They remain in the cave, seeing shadows on the wall. Knowledge must be shared, and it is your duty to return to the cave and tell the truth to other people. But this is not an easy task. Your eyes are already accustomed to the light, so you become blind again when you re-enter the darkness of the cave. And people notice that you are having difficulty seeing their world. You then say that the shadows are an illusion and that they are merely a projection of objects, and as if that weren't enough, that these objects are just replicas and imperfect copies of a much higher reality. People who are condemned to see the world from only one perspective and take the shadows as absolute and unquestionable truths naturally become upset with you. The suffering you went through when being freed from the cave is very uncomfortable, and you know it. But the people who remain in the cave see you as a madman, or even as a threat to the order of things, bringing insecurities about the most fundamental aspect of their lives. Questioning the only reality that the imprisoned know can even be fatal, which is exactly what happened to Socrates, who in an act of injustice was condemned to death and accused of corrupting the youth. One of Plato's objectives in this whole story is to show that people are trapped in viewpoints about the world which they kind of accept without questioning the shadow show that has been offered to them since they were born. But for him, there is a way out: philosophy, which is precisely the activity of thinking about thought and expanding our capacity to know and perceive the world, to question and have enough clarity and courage to face the pain and shock that awaits us when we seek knowledge. Nowadays we have many and varied caves, some of which we even choose to enter. Life doesn't always make sense, and instinctively we seek explanations, we seek meanings, and we also seek to fill the void of what we don't understand. But it's not as if there are no explanations. In fact, there are plenty of explanations. We have 1,001 meanings of life packaged in beautiful wrappings ready for delivery. Many are consumed by the people around us in our daily lives and even by ourselves sometimes. But who should provide meaning to your life if not yourself? Thank you very much, and see you next time.